And welcome to the special Banter Clause edition of 42 to Doomsday. I'm Mark.
I'm Dave.
I'm Richard.
And you better believe I'm Rob.
Hey, he's back.
So, Rob, I hear you have something to say. Do you?
That's right. Welcome to the manosphere. The four horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse are back to celebrate Christmas. Or is that Trumpmas? That's right, fellow crypto bros. The only snowflakes we acknowledge are those that fall from the sky. And while you commemorate Yule by spanking the mistletoe, we're here to talk about banter, and yet more banter, and your letters. Let it be known that the last letter I received was a cease and desist, but the less said about that, the better. Then we don horsehair wigs and the black cap of ultimate justice and address the jury in our top 5 criminal things the Doctor has committed. That Time Lord is going down! Breathe in the fumes of those 40-year-old pages, rub that Achilles cover over your yearning crotch, and ponder Uncle Terry's correspondence with His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. That's right! Backed by popular demand, it's the Target Book Club. And in what can only be described as a more target-rich environment than the Eastern Front of the Ukraine-Russian War, it's Fanwank of the Year. Lean close, dear listeners, and pucker up, for we are, in honour of our new Trumpian overlord, 47 to Doomsday. A podcast that's celebrating Christmas 2024 by proudly declaring, we're eating the dogs, we're eating the cats, and we're almost certainly eating the festive pig. Oink oink, and let's storm the Capitol all over again.
I think you scared the cat.
Praise Jesus.
And cue credits.
Thanks for that. As you can hear, everyone, we're in all the room together, so we're delighted all to be back at Camp David, I should say.
Yes.
So, welcome, boys. Lovely to see you all in person. We're having a gin and tonic. This is the dirty and cheap version, just like this podcast.
It has one job, it does it, and nothing else.
Exactly right. So, how are you boys? All good?
Fantastic.
Look, great to be here. Great to see you again, Rob.
Cheers, thank you very much. Great to be back in person at Camp David. Lovely, thank you very much.
Fantastic. So, recently, Dave, Richard and myself went to the Sirens of Audio, Sylvester McCoy, Janet Fielding Extravaganza. A great time was had by all, I think.
Really good day.
Yeah, no, this is the 5th one of these I've been to, and I obviously keep going back, because they're... Look, we've spent many, many years on this podcast and others waxing and waning and talking lyrically about the old days when fan events were run for fans by fans.
Yes.
And suddenly Phil and Dwayne over at Sirens of Audio have decided to actually run some events. I think the least we can do is turn up and enjoy them.
There was a nasty rumour going around that when I went on Sunday that somebody saw me smile. Was that true, Dave?
You were enjoying that quiz.
You were having a good time.
I was number one on the quiz, and then I got knocked down.
Mark, you and I were 1 and 2 for a while. Then
We
the
were.
finished questions happened and we were stuffed.
Well, some of us were, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, it was a great event. Really enjoyed it. Yeah. So next year is Mr. Matthew Waterhouse.
Yes, looking forward to
Oh,
that.
has he been announced?
Yes, he has been
has.
announced. Yes. He's
You
on
can
a...
buy tickets now.
Yes, he's coming on.
I could buy tickets now.
Yeah, he's coming on a freighter over to Australia. So you know, Pan Am style, he'll be coming over. So yeah. So there you go. So it was a great day, and so but looking forward to the next one. And again, thanks to Phil and Dwayne for organising it. And the venue was great. It was big enough to catch up with people you wanted to, and also avoid the you didn't want to see it all. So it was a great venue, great time, and thoroughly enjoyable. Now, while we were outside, Richard, you were talking about you had this theory about Rogue, the episode that I haven't seen, but I know my very good friend Rob here and Dave has seen it. So you have 2 minutes
for God's sake.
to talk about this theory before we all move on emotionally.
Yeah, no, very well. Now, just before we go into that, have you watched any of this, Mark, this season? Any of it?
No, what's the clip?
Not a thing.
No.
You've watched the Christmas special?
No.
You watched the 3 specials before that?
I watched one of them.
Which one?
Wake Beast.
And that was enough?
That was enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is eating into your 2 minutes, Richard.
Yeah, so...
You are aware that there's a new Doctor? Yes?
I deny this reality, but yes, let's keep going.
Yes, no, look, I have watched the new series. I enjoyed parts of it and didn't enjoy other parts of it. One episode that did strike me, well, there were two actually that probably really stood out. One, actually, interestingly enough, was Dot and Bubble. And that was probably, I actually sort of perversely actually kind of liked that one. I think it was possibly because, like most people, I wanted the protagonist to be eaten by the slugs. But look, I got what it was trying to say, and look, I got the ending with, Shooty screaming in his rage and frustration and whatever at the shallowness and bigotry and stupidity of the people. But the other one, when I was watching it, was Rogue. Now, I'm aware that the opinion is a bit divided on Rogue, and as I speak to people who've watched the season, some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. Now, you haven't watched it. Where do you two sit? I know you really liked it.
I really liked it, yes.
It's very nice to look at, and the fellow who played Rogue, I admire him as an actor, but I didn't. I thought it was very paper thin.
Yes, I must admit, Rogue didn't kind of work for me, but when I went away and thought about it, it occurred to me, I think you can sum Rogue up by a passage from Hitchhikers.
Okay.
And it comes from, it's actually from So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, which is a moment, and look, it's part of a much larger segment. It's about in the middle of the book where Arthur's back on Earth and he's in his relationship with Fenchurch. And it's part of a much larger quote, but the salient bit of it is, "This Arthur Dent," comes the cry from the furthest reaches of the galaxy, and has even now been found inscribed on a mysterious deep space probe, thought to originate from an alien galaxy at a distance too hideous to contemplate. What is he, man or mouse? Is he interested in nothing more than tea and the wider issues of life? Has he no spirit? Has he no passion? Does he not, to put it in a nutshell, fuck? Now the quote ends the quote ends by saying, "Those who wish to know should read on. Others may wish to skip to the last chapter, which is a good bit and has Marvin in it." But it occurred to me when I was thinking about Rogue, I think this Doctor does Now, if you buy into that, I suspect Rogue might do a bit for you. If you don't buy into that, you might find Rogue a little patchy. But that's my theory.
The first thing I have to say is that So Long and Thanks for All the Fish is the only one of the 5 books in that trilogy I haven't read a second time.
Really?
And now I know why.
Is that the one he part wrote, then scrapped and rewrote from scratch? I'm sure that was a rumour there for a while. One of them he part written, went through either relationship breakup or something, binned the lot and then started again. But
Paging Kevin Davies, maybe.
But look, I don't know. I'm probably not sufficiently in with Hitchhikers to know that's definite. But
Oh, well, thank you for that reading, Richard.
yes, but anyway.
Well, it's interesting because I suspect your theory doesn't quite work for me because I'm post Does the Doctor Fuck? In that I long ago have accepted that in the New Who, the Doctor dances, shall we say, and I've made my peace with that and I just don't care.
Right.
And having done that, I did find Rogue was an enjoyable adventure. I liked the cast, I liked the fun, I liked the period setting, I thought Shooty gave a good performance. I just thought it was a really fun episode. Was this sort of 7-8 years ago where I was still sort of, I deny that the Doctor's a sexually active being and, shags around, I probably would have, but I've given up on that and moved on, and so I no longer care.
Don't you remember there's no hanky-panky in the TARDIS?
Well, it's kind of like the Obi-Wan series. If you've made peace with the fact that this is just not going to gel with established Star Wars continuity,
for sure, yeah,
it's a fun series. If that's still something that concerns you, it's not. And I get it. If you're still an old fan that goes, I just don't want the Doctor sleeping around, this would be a problem for you. If you've just gone, mate, there are enough battles to find the world without this one, whatever, I move on.
We're probably lucky Terrence Dix isn't still alive.
I think Terrence Dix is probably lucky. Terrence Dix is still alive.
He would probably had the...
Now he said to me...
Well, if they claim the Telly movie finished off John Pertwee, so...
Poor old. I think you're right, David. You reach a certain point in your fan life where you go, there are only so many hills to die on, and watching Rogue is not a hill that you really need to die on. I mean, I suspect that if I go back and watch it again, without sort of, spending 45 minutes just wincing at all of what's going on, especially the grinding scene, that I'll probably enjoy it because it does look good. The cast is pretty good, and there's a reasonably decent story hidden underneath it. But I mean, like you, Dave, the whole sex in the Doctor thing is just, what's all that about? I mean, why is it necessary? Why can't the show, unlike other shows, you sort of not embrace that sort of thing for their lead? I mean, but this is where we are. I mean, obviously the creators believe that in making the Doctor more relatable in that regard, they make it a better experience for the viewers. I just think that you're just losing a unique factor or facet of the character.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that all 4 of us around this table drinking these gin and tonics doesn't need will they, won't they in their drama.
No.
But I think we'd also concede that a lot of people who are very casual viewers of a lot of shows do enjoy a bit of will they, won't they drama. There's a reason why it's a genre and it's got a trope.
Yeah.
So it's in there. I've moved on from that. But yeah, if you haven't, that would be a problem. Would be, and you couldn't accept Rogue if that was still something that, a hill you were going to die on. I get that.
Yeah. I just don't think the show or the character is built to sustain that sort of storytelling. It just looks awkward and, just really awkward.
Well, the problem is the Doctor is a character where the premise of the show is that he's in literally a different point in time and space every story.
Yes.
So he's either a callous slut or the worst romance in history, or he's got to screw his companions. So the premise doesn't really work.
He effectively steals them from their home and family and then takes them off and then screws them and then leaves them behind. So, yes.
Yeah, like the premise doesn't really work. When you actually break it down, it doesn't work.
No.
And I don't think it's right for Doctor Who. But again, there are lots of people who tuned in because they wanted to see if David Tennant and Billy Piper would, get it on in season 2.
Yeah.
That got into the ratings. So I wasn't one of them. I didn't enjoy that series that much. But if I probably watched season 2 now, I probably wouldn't be worried about all that because I've just accepted it.
Yeah,
just moved on.
It's best to accept these things.
You were very quiet during that, Mark.
Well, I haven't it, so,
Well, you watch it now.
It's because the 42 to Doomsday audience wants to know, does Mutt know?
Is he a man or is he a mouse?
And now, on to our next topic.
So, Mark, when you were hunting around for topics, I put forward one that I thought would be worthy of this podcast, where we like to go a little crazy, like to talk about the dark corners of the web that other podcasts daren't go into.
So this is one you knocked back for...
He wasn't allowed. He didn't get past the censorship board.
Not at all. I suggested, because I know you guys like a good top 5, and I suggested, what about top 5 crimes the Doctor's committed? Because I suspect when you scratch the surface, there's a lot of them, and who better to talk about evil and wickedness than all of us?
We've taken the topic as broadly as we've wanted to.
Well, I have.
Too broad and too deep for the TV show. Yeah.
Well, I certainly have, so...
Now, Dave, the same rules apply in terms of if we have something similar, snappo, and we can jump into each other's conversations. All right, so let's start with our number 5. I'm going to go first. I think... Rob.
Well, I've interpreted my 5th place one quite broadly. So in 5th place for me, we have the 6th Doctor's donning that costume.
Oh, yes.
Crime against fashion.
Well, surely those patterns and that combination of colours is a war crime worthy of its own Nuremberg trial. It's a crime against decency, humanity, taste. It's not good.
Against Colin.
It actually crippled the era pretty much from the off.
Yeah. If Colin was in Texas, tort law would definitely allow him to sue him.
I actually had that one when I was sort of initially thinking about this, because I always had the other ones, like you could have Bellina sort of candy-coloured tops and some of the outfits they made Perry wear, the J&T uniform type stuff, Sarah in her Andy Pandy outfit.
Yes.
Yeah, so very good.
I mean, yes, it's low-hanging fruit, but tasty nonetheless.
Lots of flares in the 70s.
Look, you can get away with fashion of that era, right? The 60s and the 70s, but that's not nothing. That's just not fashion at all. That's just a disgrace.
Yeah. It is a disgrace, and especially with the cameras. I mean, they can pick up colour ranges, but I mean, they had to get specially built cameras for that just to get the full spectrum of colour. The test card, ultra colour. So it's high def before it even. Yeah, it's appalling because even now you put it on, it's just so distracting. It still doesn't work. Big mistake.
It's a crime.
Richard, got to go next.
I initially started thinking in much the same vein as Rob, but my thoughts took me down a slightly darker path or different path and led me down sort of the 10 Commandments, 7 Deadly Sins type route.
Oh dear.
When I was thinking about, because I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm just going to wind up listing, when the Doctor kills people and stuff. So
that's what I've done.
Well, that's all right. And if that works for you, Dave, that's great. So that's where I kind of wound up. Now, this is probably a slightly left field one. So obviously some of the commandments, like thou shalt not commit adultery, maybe, although we have just established that, yes.
Wasn't there Mickey and, what's her name?
Yes, well,
Rose?
that's true.
Yeah,
and look, Dave said the Doctor was a galactic slut or something, so look, Yeah, so the first ones I had 2, and I was sort of a bit done this, were thou shalt not create false idols, or thou shalt honour thy mother and thy father. Now, thou shalt not create idols, probably the Doctor's thirst for knowledge, which ties into that whole end of Planet of the Spiders type thing, which obviously then gives you the deadly sin of avarice. Or alternatively, look, you could go for thou shalt honour thy mother and thy father, and what better way to do that than blow up your home planet? So, yeah, so look, that's mine. Number 5.
So basically, he's a bit of a homicidal git.
Yeah, well, I know I'm getting to wrath. But
Oh, okay,
yeah,
all right. I was like,
or
you're
thou
all right.
shalt not kill.
Yeah.
But yes, go on.
Dave!
So I've played a very straight back to these. And my number 5, starting small, low key scale, but I'm going for the murder of Professor Clegg.
Ooh.
Controversy.
Ooh.
Now, when the body is found, if this was an episode of Law and Order, you can imagine the two opposing counsels arguing, and the prosecutor would be saying, on murder 2, 10 years, and the defence would be saying, bring it down to man 1, we'll do 2, and trying to work it out. Now, I don't know whether it was murder or manslaughter, but the doctor brought this innocent man in off the streets, subjected him to an uncontrolled experiment, and killed him. Now, I don't know what D notices the Brigadier had to issue to make sure that the doctor wasn't arrested, but we all suspect that Pertwee then spent the next 6 months away from Earth in the TARDIS because of the Great One. I suspect he was just avoiding the police.
The old Bill.
But one way or the other, the doctor killed an innocent professor, and that's got to be a crime.
And the headphones probably didn't help.
Doing a little hairdressing on the side.
But look, the doctor did recover, and the Brigadier, by going to see that Turkish belly dancer to emotionally get over it. Yes, thank you, Dave.
What's yours?
Well, the doctor being a bit of a git to his companions over the years. So look, he doesn't do a great job at protecting him. They've been shot at, possessed, dumped, shouted at, strangled, in some cases die, except in New Who where they don't. When you try and get emotional support from the doctor, say, for example, I don't know, Graham, who's, telling him I've got an illness and everything like that, it's pretty much, yeah, nah, So a lot of these companions, I feel, when they travel with the doctor, have actually got a lot of Stockholm syndrome. The only one who's really sort of overcome it and used it for good is basically Ace, who the doctor manipulated, mentally tortured. And what does she do? She basically tells him to sod off, and then starts up a tax-dodging charity. I mean, that is the best use of any time with the doctor at all.
Number 4.
Now,
Rob?
Mine is, number 4 is unauthorised impersonation of government officials.
Oh.
Bureaucrats of the universe take note. Power of the Daleks.
Yes.
Enemy of the World. And
Yes.
now there's a little wrinkle on this one where the second Doctor wears blackface in Enemy of the World
Oh.
to take on Salamander's character.
And an accent.
And, well, there's time to be cancelled, but now that we live in the manosphere, no more cancellation. So, and anything
That's a
basically...
good idea.
Yes, well, yes. And anything that involves psychic paper, which basically is just manipulation of people, getting into their brain and just, twisting their mind. So, yeah. Remember, bureaucrats are people too.
Dave!
So my number 4 is building on your number 5, Mark, and I've just put in here Perry. Whether it goes from literally an assault on her in the twin dilemma through to the various forms of abuse and neglect that she suffers until you get to whatever happened to her in Mind Warp. Now, in one scenario, after she pleads with him to leave the planet, says, I don't like it here, I want to go, and he's, oh, whatever, keeps going. In one scenario, she ends up dead. In the other one, she's left there all alone, abandoned, and the bastard never goes back for her, and winds up marrying Brian Blessed. So I don't think any companion has had a worse time in the TARDIS than Perry has. And unfortunately, a lot of that was at the hands of the Doctor. As I say, it's an actual assault or neglect or abuse. His treatment of her was criminal.
What about Martha? I know he didn't strangle her,
I don't
which
think
is
he was
always a good thing, but he was a bit of a prick to her, wasn't he?
Yeah, I
really?
don't think he was a criminal to Martha. He was definitely a dick, though.
Yeah, I don't think she was treated very nicely.
No.
Any other companions come to mind where the doctor's been a complete arse to them?
Well, it's funny, given that he calls Sarah Jane Smith his best friend, the sheer abuse that she suffers when she's with the Doctor, just the level of torture and mayhem and being hypnotised left, right and centre, all the rest of it. She does not have a fun time in the TARDIS either, but I think they get away with it because the Doctor clearly likes her and tries to look after her.
And she clearly doesn't want to leave,
Yes.
even
No, that's
though
right.
she's being menaced by bug-eyed monsters and shot at and whatever.
There's your
Yes.
Stockholm syndrome that Mark mentioned before.
I don't want to go.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the Doctor is quite abusive of Harry early on.
Oh,
at
yes.
least.
Yeah.
Famously so.
Yeah.
Which is a bit cruel, but
And I guess you can read the War Machines as soon as they get a chance to ditch Dodo, they do. So
Dodo exits the TARDIS. Bye.
Or theory that the TARDIS hates Victoria, which is why it keeps landing in bases under siege. Hoping she's going to be killed.
That's a good one, isn't it? I like that one. That's a great theory. Ricardo?
my number 4, continuing down my sort of more biblical approach. I had thou shalt have no gods but me, or alternatively you could probably go the sin of pride. Now, I've really just written 3 words here, which is David Tennant's ego. The 10th Doctor's ego. Sorry, let's separate them. But, you've got that whole lonely god thing, or the Time Lord Victorious, or whatever that they did. I think probably the sort of denouement of that is the Waters of Mars, where he's sort of walking out of the base, and then he just sort of does a, you know what? Turns around and goes back. Time will bend to my will, or whatever. He comes out with, I can do whatever I want. Yeah, you've probably also got, look, don't like to pick on Colin. Colin is quite pleased with himself during most of his run in the series. You could also go into McCoy, the great manipulator, that whole bit in the Virgin book where the Daleks call in, what is it, the Carfarak Guthrie, the oncoming storm. And anyway, so that's my number 4.
They build him up so much, don't they, really? And the interesting about it today, Peter Capaldi, was he president of the Earth? It sounded like
Defenders that's right. They turn the special key and he becomes president of the... Then you've got the whole Matt Smith thing, I've seen entire armies crap their pants and run away because the Doctor's name's mentioned or something,
Come on.
And that's just silly. It is just silly. And again, the show's not built for that. The show's
terrible writing.
Yeah. It's awful. What is the writer thinking when they're doing that? Or what is RTD thinking when he's ticking that off? Are you embarrassed about the show and you want to big it up so it matches something in Star Wars or whatever? I mean, it's just silly.
Yeah. And where do you go?
From there, exactly. You've written yourself into a blind alley.
He's president of the Earth, then what's he going to become next? Mavic Chen. It's just nuts. Yeah.
Speaking of where you're going to go, Mark.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, following on from young Rob's commentary about the 6 Doctors' coat, I was thinking about the Doctors' costumes over the years, and let's be honest, the 2nd Doctor's hat. Ooh. Now, look, the jacket... Admittedly, the 6th Doctor's jacket does get a lot of flack and deservedly so. But let's not forget the first bad costuming decision. He basically wore a giant dick on his head. He stood at a mile away, right? So he's walking around Vulcan with essentially a massive dick on his head, be inconspicuous, but he's walking around with this thing. And he gets to the Highlands of Scotland. He's walking over the beautiful, the glens and, and Culloden. Well, Culloden's not exactly beautiful with dead people. But anyway.
So you've actually seen this, Mark, have you?
I was just going to say, I was actually fired up my 16mm Prince of Power and Highlanders just to rub it into you boys that Troughton is going over the hill. And all of a sudden, like he says, great big dick on his head. And I'm surprised he didn't blow his head off with a cannonball. So it's no wonder that the Doctor actually got rid of that hat, because it is actually quite a very stupid piece of costuming.
And then he swapped it for the sunglasses and the headscarf he wears in Underwater Menace.
He was obviously very trying out a number of things during his first couple of stories of that era, but that hat is absolutely completely ridiculous, and it was a great thing that they actually got rid of it.
If we're going to charge people with having dicks on their heads, can we talk about the Dalek troopers in the Moffat era that literally had the Dalek stalks come out of their foreheads? What were they thinking?
I don't know. It's like, and they should know better. He had that guy, from Face of Evil, cricket glove on his head, David Banks' hand on his head. It's the 70s. I understand that, but these guys have got money and and imagination allegedly. Let's just put it down.
I was going to say later on, it was the Matt Smith one where they have the little thing opens in the head and the stalk comes out.
Oh, don't give us. Yeah, it's just awful.
Well, then you've also got the ones in Resurrection that are wearing the helmet with the dick out the front of it. The dick hat.
The OG dick hat.
And didn't they actually make some merchandise with that?
Oh yes, there was. Yeah. And it actually had I think it actually had a bit of fishing line or something on it, so you could make it bob up and down.
Number 3.
I'm going to throw it to Dave.
I've gone with what I think is an obvious one, and that is the genocide of the Daleks in Remembrance.
Snap. Oh, snap. Yeah.
So, I guess we can have...
No snap.
No snap? Okay. 3 out of 4 is not bad. I guess, we can have the conversation about this all and whether it's justified, but it's one thing to have a whole bunch of aliens that are on their way in a fleet and you've got no ability to stop them invading Earth and wiping people out, and you do what you need to do. This is more like Burnside leaving some VCRs in the back of a van and hoping to entrap a few criminals to take one. The Doctor literally sets up the Daleks. He says, come here, do this, fall in my trap, and then I'll use it to wipe you out. It was not a defensive thing. The Daleks would not have come to Earth had he not planted the hand of Omega there. So all the people who were killed in remembrance of the Daleks, including that delightful Mr. Smith, he was a horrible racist, but he was pretty.
It was a cruel man, but fair.
But all those people who were killed because the Doctor lured the Daleks to Earth just to wipe them out. So I think that when you actually think about it, that is quite a criminal act. Guys, you had it on your list. What did you think?
Well, I mean, the Doctor sort of sits by and watches Mondas sort of catch fire. And, I mean, you do see... We're talking about the destruction of a home planet, but there's the destruction of the Ice Warrior space fleet in the Seeds of Death.
Yes.
I've actually got that one, the later one.
Even, wiring up the laboratory in Genesis of the Daleks and ready to, blow them all up as well. In their cradle, effectively.
Yep.
Little baby Daleks. What have they ever done to anyone yet?
At least he's conflicted about that.
He is conflicted, and then at the end of it goes, stuff it, let's go back in. So,
Whereas McCoy needs to change his pants after remembrance. So.
well, yes.
And what about the Vervoids as well? Because, like, in the Vervoids...
Well, he's put on trial for
He's put on trial, but so what the bloody Valier should have done was actually fast-forwarded to Remembrance and said, I think I got him now. You know what I mean? So
Now, you see, I can argue in Vervoids that if they're a man-made species, then man has the right to end them.
Ooh.
Now, I'm not saying I believe in that, but I reckon if I was the Defence Council there,
You can argue that?
I could argue that.
The Dave Yard.
So, there's numerous instances of the Doctor engaging in mass slaughter, not of defenceless peoples as such, but there's a high body count.
It's the entrapment that gets this over
Yes,
the line.
no, that is
Yeah.
unique.
I mean, also, I was just thinking about today, was got genocide, but also, in Image of the Fendal, he hands Scott the gun to blow his brains out. It can handle, it can be done on an individual level or basically on a whole race or planet
Enabling
perspective.
euthanasia before it's legalised in Britain is not a good look. So,
No, yes, he is a bit of a bugger, isn't he, really? Young Richard.
Hello, Richard. All right, I'm at number 3. So my commandment I've gone to here is thou shalt not steal. Well, obviously he steals the TARDIS at the very start, and that's how it all started. He takes a Master's dematerialisation circuit and the monk's dimensional control, and actually he stiffs the monk twice because he takes...
He does.
He does it again in Dalek Master Plan. Arguably the Metabellus 3 crystal. There's the Master's little recall device thingy in the 5 Doctors.
Yeah.
All of that. My 7 Deadly Sins one actually doesn't tie into that. I've actually gone with lust. Well, as we've just done, the Doctor does indeed get it on. We've also got the 10th Doctor and Rose. She is clearly into him, and he obviously is pretty into her. I think you've also got all the people who used to lust after Perry, which we sort of touched on a little earlier as well.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Oh, look, it even goes back to Pertwee, something like the Green Death, where he's actively cock-blocking Cliff Jones to stop him taking Joe Grant away.
He is, isn't he, really?
Yeah, so
quite
there
obvious,
you go.
isn't it,
So,
really?
yes, he's obviously a sexual being.
Number 2.
What are you, Dave?
Well, I've gone with another very literal crime, and that is the crime of arson, because the 5th Doctor started the Great Fire of London. At least 6 dead, 30,000 homes destroyed, and he's laughing about it.
Yes, nothing like a little bit of light arson to clear out some redevelopment opportunities.
Slumlord Davo.
You got anything to add to that arson count, Rob?
No, other than that was a very good choice, Dave. Well done.
I concur. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
I enjoyed your choice too.
Very good. What about you, Mark? No worries. My number 2 is not bumping off the Master sooner. Let's be honest, this nut job of a person has been the scourge of the Doctor and the universe for millennia. And with the amount of planets, and the body count is massive, right? Every time the Doctor tries to convince this person or looks for the best in them, they just crap on them. And the Doctor is really an absolute chump because he keeps going back and trying to rehabilitate and goes, I forgive you, and he's wiped out the Time Lords, and it's just absolutely awful. So let's be honest, the Doctor can commit harry-carry when he wants to, right? So as we talked about genocide, has anything good come of the Master being around? Think about it. In Genesis of the Daleks, right, the Doctor goes to Sarah and Harry, he goes, well, look, there is actually some good from the Daleks. Planets get together and fight them. But really, has anybody got together to combat the Master? No, I don't think they have, apart from Chameleon.
But isn't there that whole storyline where he has the 4 heartbeats or whatever because that's supposed to trigger the end of the universe or something?
I've watched that story once. I don't remember.
I don't know.
And then that's what sent him mad because he was carrying that signal for all these...
What you're saying, Mark, is if Pertwee had just sort of pushed the Master off Jodrell Bank in Terror of the Autons, the universe is a better place.
Even the 13th Doctor last time, him stuck in that cabinet, I would have just powered up the space octopus and just bloody wiped him out and said, that's enough.
He goes to at the end of Planet of Fire. I mean, he sort of got the thing, but he can't do it. But
just do it. Could have saved so many planets and people just by doing it earlier. He was bugger all use in the time war. He ran away. Absolutely useless. That's my number 2. Rob, over to you.
Well, my next one works if you regard this character as being of the older generation. So I've gone with elder abuse insofar as the mental torture and physical endangerment of Davros by the Fifth Doctor by aiming a gun at his head constitutes some form of a crime. Come on, the wet vet, even the legless have rights. So,
But they're not legless anymore, mate.
well,
It's a miracle. They've grown back.
Well, if you're doing that, what about taking him out of his wheelchair?
Oh, throwing him around,
it's a
yeah.
life support system, effectively.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or indeed freezing him in the block of ice to begin with.
Yeah, just takes a piss out of him. Bye-bye. Like that. Ricardo, your number 2, please.
Number 2. Well, moving through our list of the commandments, I've got to thou shalt not bear false witness.
Ooh!
Which obviously is lying. Well, there's the whole River Song thing about, what is it, rule number 1 of travelling in the TARDIS, the Doctor always lies. But we'll just breeze past that one. Look, obviously the very first one is he lies about the fluid link in the Daleks. He lies to Liz Shaw and Spearhead to try and get the key back, and then immediately, oh yes, I'll help you, I just need to get some things out of the TARDIS, and tries to bugger off. He lies to Rory and both the Amys and the girl who waited, says he's going to save them both, and then sort of pushes the old Amy out of the...
You should have got rid of both of them while he had the children.
Amy side.
Yes, we did actually a minute ago talk about the Doctor manipulating Ace in Fenric and that to make her stop believing in him. The deadly sin I had here was gluttony, but that means we have to talk about the 2 Doctors, so
Yes.
I'll just skate on through.
Or, I wouldn't say no to a salami sandwich.
Yes, good, very good actually.
Impression or just a reference?
The reference.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, you need to work on that, Tom Baker.
Oh, my throbber. Very good.
Yeah, no Nick Briggs, you.
No,
Which is
no.
a good thing.
Thank you. Number 1. Young Dave.
My number 1, I've gone with a serious crime. This is Nazi level. The Doctor
Jesus.
in Warriors of the Deep gasses an entire civilization out of existence. Now, I get that we're meant to have this big moral dilemma and the Doctor's forced to take action he doesn't really want to, but we've at this point had 20 seasons of 5 incarnations of the Doctor being clever, innovative, and getting out of things without giving in to his morals. And suddenly it's just, you know what, it's all too hard. I'll take this noble race of creatures that I respect and admire and gas the bastards. And then just go, oh, I didn't mean to. I tried. It's pathetic. It's genocide. And you know what? The Gen Zs on Twitter should be in uproar about that.
So in other words, Dave, there should have been another way.
When you show the gas in episode 1, by part 4 you must have used it.
Yes!
Yeah.
What is that gas canister over there?
Chekhov's gas canister.
Yes, it's dangerous to marine and reptile life. I wonder if we'll encounter any of them in the next 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crime of terrible writing as well.
It
But
is.
All jokes aside, I genuinely think it's quite a low point for the Doctor.
Yeah. I wonder if Johnny Byrne's original scripts, or the scripts, actually had the gassing, or was it, say, we're just doing Die Hard in space again?
I mean, if it was Pertwee, he would have, rewired something.
Oh,
to short
absolutely.
out
He
the
would have
thing
knocked
that-
them out, or given them a small dose or something like that, or, to try and do something. Yeah, but
That
yeah.
made the missiles so they can't fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's
No.
unlike the Fifth Doctor anyway.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it's almost giving him a character.
Whoa!
That's 40 years in the making.
Hey!
Rob, your number uno?
Well, I've just gone more with a melange of just different, deaths at the Doctor's hands.
Smorgasbord, if you will.
The deliberate murder of Sutekh in Pyramids of Mars is as cold-blooded a murder as anything depicted in the show. I mean, yes, there's an element of, let's save civilization, but anyway.
But after the last season, he's now only attempted murder.
Don't fucking talk about it. The manslaughter arguable of Harrison Chase, we're fighting, and then, he's in the mincer. Shit.
I'll
Okay.
just turn the speed up.
Compost. Okay. The very deliberate murder of Eldrad via tripping in the hand of fear.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
they've scarf, let's pull it. Oh,
Yes.
bye-bye. Killing Storr with a DMAT gun, a bit of light dematerialisation forever and ever. Yeah, so look, it's not high up on the list, but the Doctor does enjoy a bit of wanton murder. Or manslaughter.
Very good.
Fair.
On that theme, I had one that I was considering, which was the murder of Monarch at the end of Fort of Doomsday, where the Doctor saved the day, he's taking control of the ship, all the slaves are free of Monarch's influence. Monarch gets to the TARDIS, stop, I'll just throw the poison at him and kill him.
Yes.
Because we've got 2 minutes to the end of the story, and I've got to get rid of the villain. Here, we'll just kill him.
I can't remember in the new series, has he actively gone out and killed...
Like one-on-one.
Deep Breath is that ambiguous one about whether he pushed the faceless man
He did.
off the building or whatever it
He
was.
bloody did. He was magnificent, wasn't he?
Mark.
Yes, hello.
Number 1 crime committed by the Doctor.
Regenerating into the 15th Doctor.
I was waiting for this to come up. Let's not say this was not predictable.
Predictable as ever, Doctor. The Doctor over the years has had many faces, canon and la non-canon, but he's never been as ineffectual and just plain shit as this one. Either he's crying, twerking, wide-eyed, and that's just from the 3 clips I've seen. Even the wig that Sylvester McCoy wore in Time of the Rani is a more effective incarnation. If there's anyone more deserving of being thrown off a radio telescope, poisoned with radiation, or getting shot, and hopefully at the same time, it's this one. And good riddance to you if you have gone.
Right. Well, I'm here to boot this home. I don't know if I can top that, but anyway.
Well, that's what Mark thinks.
Discuss. Convince me otherwise.
In your eyes, Mark, is there any redemption for the character that you see, or the lack of character you see with the new Doctor? So there's nothing that RTD in the already filmed second series can do?
No.
That horse is...
It's dead, Jim.
Okay. All right.
Over to you, Richard.
Oh, well, after that revelation, we'll
we've got to watch it as well.
See if we can get it back up again.
Blue tablets for that, mate.
For my final one, look, I have actually gone for the slightly obvious one, which is Thou Shalt Not Kill, which I guess marries to the deadly sin of wrath.
Hey, look, Rothy!
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, this is the obvious one. The Doctor, as Rob noted, and indeed Dave, has a very high personal kill count across the journey, and that's leaving aside all the genocides and off-screen deaths and sort of stuff. Some of the highlights, Shock Eye, obviously, is one with the mothballs. Staking the great vampire with a spaceship.
Yes.
That's a good one.
That's actually a pretty good one, isn't it?
Disintegrating the Ogron in Day of the Daleks, and actually, if you watch the special edition, he does it twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He palms a live bomb off onto the Graffinder K.
Oh, that's right.
Sending the Ice Warrior fleet into the sun, and the 2 he kills with the heat lamp things he's running around with.
Yeah.
He drowns all the Arachnos children in the Runaway Bride when he blows the Thames Barrier. And indeed, going back to the Hexachromon, he creates cyanide to kill Solon in Brain of Morbius and wafts it up through the air system. And of course, on the Wrath, I think probably the thing he does to the family of blood at the end of human nature, like they want immortality, so he gives it to them and chains one in the heart of a star, puts one inside all mirrors in the universe, and does whatever. So they're just trapped there and turns one into a scarecrow, doesn't he? I think.
Yes.
I believe you pronounced it wrong though, Richard.
What?
It's immortality.
That's fine.
Very good. Now, what do we learn from all that?
The Doctor is not the moral character that younger fans think he is. Probably my takeaway. Do not live your life according to the morals of the Doctor.
No, action-adventure series, people just have to die.
That's right.
Inventively.
Yes. Well, actually, there is, and I will give a shout out to the Caldor City Magic Bullet website. There is actually an article on there, the Doctor's kill count. Troughton is actually pretty close to the top.
Really?
I will say, yes. Well, I think because, let's face it, he floods Atlantis, so he probably kills a heap of people in the...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Cyber fleet by 3.
Yes.
Ice Warrior fleet.
Yes, Ice Warrior fleet. He blows up the Ice Warrior ship and the original Ice Warriors.
He instigates the Civil War on
Yes,
Skaro.
on Skaro, that's exactly right. He's actually kills the weed creature. He was about to drain the Great Intelligence before his friends rescue him in inverted commas.
Yes.
Gives the Dominators a bomb to play with. Bang. You know the sort of thing. But there you go.
With classic series Doctors more violent, would you say, in terms of their body count, or they've got a higher body count than the series on that Calder website?
Based on that website, actually, yes, they are.
Yeah.
The 7th Doctor, I think, is at the top. But I think...
Just for 12 stories.
That's pretty
They
good.
won't count the books,
but Hartnell and Troughton, actually, I think are sort of like 3 and 4 or something. So, yeah.
But again, it's all about that reinterpretation of the Doctor's character and of the show. Because the Doctor was never seen as this moral force in the first show. He was a good person. And he saved the day. He was on the side of right and all the rest of it. But he wasn't this sort of moral character by which you could live your life.
No.
And the other thing is the old show had monsters. And it's okay to kill monsters.
Yes.
And although Shock Eye is basically just John Stratton in a bit of makeup, the Androgums are written as monsters. They're not human. They've got superhuman strength, different morality. So, in theory, the Doctor wasting Shock Eye is no different to killing a Dalek.
Yes.
And back in those days, they had monsters. Whereas in the new series, you don't really have monsters. You don't have irredeemable races. There's all this sort of slightly more refined morality.
Yes, even the snot monster gets to live.
Yes.
Why?
Did anyone else think Dogma when they watched that?
Yes. The Golgothan.
Oh, yes.
The Golgothan from Dogma.
Yes.
Does that make for better storytelling, being less monstrous?
I like, a good monster that gets blown up at the end. I think that's
It's very
part of
cathartic.
adventure.
Yeah,
That's right.
they get what they deserve.
Well, thank you, lads. That was much fun and frivolity. And now it's time for Target Book Club.
This time round, we are looking at novelisations of Cybermen stories. And because we're anal retentive fans, we're going to do this in chronological order, starting with Richard.
I read a book called Doctor Who and the Cybermen.
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
By Jerry Davis.
Hey, it's got pictures.
I've actually got a note about the pictures.
Excellent.
Just the sort of facts and figures before we start. This is the 12th Target book published, so this is very early in the run, February 1975.
Wow.
It is the second novel of a Troughton story. The first was The Abominable Snowmen, about 3 months earlier. Yep, by Terence Dix. It is the first Cyberman novel, and because it's the first Cyberman novel, and obviously they perhaps feel they need to reintroduce them, the first chapter is sort of a prologue on the evolution of the Cybermen, which actually then states the Cybermen evolved on Telos, and then subsequently colonised Mondas. Yes. The Cybermen also say this in the novel, which is a variance from the televised story. But as Dave noted, yes, it does have interior artwork by Alan Willow, who did a lot of the early Targets. He never did a Target cover though. He was actually a comic artist. He did quite a few of those sort of kids military comics like Combat and Air Ace and those sorts of things. Do some stuff for 2000 AD, TV Century 21. I think he also did some work in the annuals and stuff too, not specifically the Doctor Who ones, because World Distributors, if you look at their output, they did annuals on pretty much everything.
It's quite varied, isn't it? It really is.
So, yeah. The cover is by Chris Achilleos. Dave has a very nice version of the second edition there, which has a cover by Bill Donahue of the Cybermen sort of against a starscape.
Which I must admit, when I was about 6 and just pulled that off the dead shelf, I thought they were two giant Cybermen walking in space. Because as a kid, you take it literally.
It looks like Wheel in Space Part 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the difference, obviously, between them, the Cybermen on the reprint are the correct versions. Yes, whereas the Achilleos cover actually has the Invasion or Revenge version, which I believe is meant to be a tie-in to Revenge. Well, see, we're in February 75, so that's about 3 months before Revenge screened.
Oh.
Yes, so
loose tie in there.
Yes, but the interior artwork, again, has the correct versions. Now, I obviously read this one years before I ever saw the episodes.
Yeah.
And look, I do remember quite enjoying it as a kid. I actually thought it was quite a good book. Rereading it now with the sort of benefit of the DVD and the animated episodes and all those years, look, you realise it's a fairly straight retelling of the televised story, which, look, is probably right for the time. I mean, that book would have been originally released about, 7 or 8 years after the actual story had been on in the UK. So making, radical alterations to the story, I think probably would have been a no-no, I would have thought. They do sort of change a few things. The first is clearly the name. I suspect calling the story the Moonbase on screen probably allows you to maintain a bit of mystery, maybe for at least the first part of episode 1. I mean, look, they do reveal the Cybermen sort of in the cliffhanger, but calling it Doctor Who and the Cybermen, you kind of know where we're going.
Bells the cat early.
Yeah, but look, in a lot of the early Targets, they did do that. Doctor Who and the Doomsday weapon sounds a bit more exciting than the colony in space, doesn't it? Anyway, look, to the book itself, look, it's a pretty competent retread of the plot, and look, I think it's generally well written. It's not a particularly erudite or challenging read. We're not really in sort of Malcolm Hulke territory here.
No.
You think of his novelisation for the Silurians, which is a great book.
And contemporaneous with this.
Yes, indeed. And, you lose a lot of the little sort of Troughton nuances to the performances and stuff. Again, look, it's fairly bog standard, as I said. None of the characters are really fleshed out. In fairness, that's probably in keeping with the actual story. But
Polly's still making coffee, is she?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a few broad attempts to characterise the base crew, mainly by pointing out their nationalities. Hobson is now a sort of a thick-set, salt of the earth Yorkshireman. The Italian crew member's called Luigi.
Where's Mario?
Their mad Dane is called Nils, and I think the Germans is called Fritz or Franz or something. So,
God.
So that sort of stuff's fairly light. There is actually, you mentioned Polly. Look, there is a couple of mentions of the all male, by the way, crew's reactions to Polly.
Yeah.
When she comes in and takes off the spacesuit. It's probably not quite as overt as in the 10th Planet. Planet.
Oh, yeah.
They're whistling at her as she comes down the ladder.
Yeah, and making a point of her legs and all sorts of stuff.
And well, I think I've mentioned this before, but in the televised version of the 10th Planet, the General Cutler sort of says, "Don't just stand there like a group of frustrated penguins," or whatever she said, get back to work. But yes, really, she is a stereotypical female companion. She's there to make the coffee, ask the really obvious questions to keep the reader involved, scream, etc. Jamie has the sort of broad Scottish accent, and the book is actually written with the Scottish accent in mind. He's sadly also described as being a little bit thick, even by 1745 standards.
Wow. Damn it with fake praise there.
Yeah, here's a quote from the book. They do try and give him a little bit more to do. Ben and Polly also get a bit of an update there now from the 1970s. Ben makes a comment about having seen the Apollo landing. I think so, yeah, so they now don't come from the 60s anymore. Well, again, you're probably dealing with an audience who've never seen the War Machines or whatever. So,
no, that's right.
or wouldn't remember it. So Ben, for his part, actually comes off sort of marginally better. He still gets to save Benoit out on the lunar surface.
Yeah.
And he's the one who helps put the coffee tray when Cybermen punch the hole in the dome. It's him who helps does that. He also has that bit where he's sitting up in the observation dome with the binoculars, watching the Cybermen, all 8 of them, whatever it is, come stomping over the surface of the moon.
Cool, blimey, look at that!
Yeah, Gov. There's a few other variations in the TV story. Again, ties into that upcoming appearance in Revenge. 2 of the Cybermen have black helmets. One of them, I think, has got a red stripe or something across his chest unit. They actually have names in this. They don't in the televised story, but they're called Tarn and Krang are the 2 leaders. Their dialogue's also been slightly altered. You don't have the bit like, "Only stupid Earth brains would have been," whatever. Or the clever, clever, clever.
You're giving Nick Briggs a run for your money, aren't you?
So they sort of tightened that up to make him seem a bit less emotional. Probably the one big change, just to finish up, the Moonbase or the Cybermen is probably remembered. The Doctor does his big speech about there are some corners of the universe that have bred the most terrible things. In the book, it actually concludes now with the words, "They must be fought to the death."
Oh!
Yeah. Laying that thing out that he's a bloodthirsty little man or straight away. So, look, I'll wind this up. But, I enjoyed reading it. Look, just taking it as a novel, it's probably nothing special. Well, 3.5 out of 5.
3.5, okay.
Yep, 3.5.
Huh, very good. Who's next?
That would be me, because I'm doing The Wheel in Space.
Oh!
Oh, one of the rarest targets.
Yes.
Or the rarest target.
He got the one from the warehouse.
Well, this was published in 1988.
Yeah.
It is 130 in the run, so it's getting towards the end of the target run.
It is.
This was bought in 1988, and I can tell you because my dad's writing and has my name in the front from when I took it to school.
I was about to say, so it didn't get nicked out of your school bag or whatever.
That's right. So look, I picked The Wheel in Space because it's one of the lesser known stories, I think, and it occurred to me when I was reading this that although I know a couple of the broad beats of the story, and obviously I know episodes 3 and 6 because they exist, I actually don't know a lot of the individual beats inside each episode, and so a lot of what was going on was a little bit of a mystery to me. I've long had the theory that one of the problems that The Wheel in Space has is that episode 3 is the sort of the dull episode where they sort of pause the story to explain what's going on, introduce the side maps, etc.
Yep.
Reading the book, it seems I was wrong, because the first half is actually quite dull. It's really obvious that Troughton was obviously on holiday for at least an episode of this, because the Doctor sort of gets knocked out quite early in part 1. He's out of all of part 2.
Yep.
And there's just not a lot that actually goes on. Now, you have the servo robot, which those of us who grew up in the 80s, I just all assumed that the servo robot was a really, really big deal because every bloody publication had a picture of the servo robot.
It's probably one of the only pictures they had.
Well, obviously it was, but it's in the tech manual, it's in the 20th anniversary things.
Yeah.
It's
Was it Ian Levine's basement?
It was in Ian Levine's basement, yes.
But it's only in about 2 scenes. There's not a lot that does happen for the first half of the book. Fortunately, episodes 4 and 5 I think are by far the best.
Yeah.
And there's some really good action going on there. Once the Cybermen are actually on the wheel, I actually found this was quite a good rollicking yarn, and I thought the story did turn around quite a bit, but it is very clear that the first half is just sort of padded out to get to the 6 episodes. But fortunately, it improves. In terms of a novel, look, it is, again, very, very much just the novel of the story. So I think a faithful rendition of the story was what is expected of Terrence, and he definitely delivers that. It's 140-something pages, so a bit longer than the old style, and this is the point where they're allowing a little bit of creativity in terms of page length and to go on. Sadly, the Cybermen don't really get any sort of proper description or detail at all. They really are just generic monster that rocks up and does generic monster stuff. And that's sort of the same for the rest of it. I probably had expected a bit more, but it got better as it went along. It was a faithful rendition. It's got a really cool cover with the Cybermen and
it is
a much better wheel than ever turned up on screen.
Yeah, it is a good cover.
So look, it was a nice novel. It's certainly a good way to familiarise yourself with the story, but very run-of-the-mill. I would give it a C+.
Would you say Terence's adaptation of it was workmanlike?
Yeah, it's not from when he was novelising the latter end of the Tom Baker era and doing literally 12 a year.
Yeah.
There is a bit more to it than that. He has a little bit of stuff about Zoe. He definitely goes into a lot of the stuff about how Jamie feels about Victoria leaving at the start. So there's a few flourishes, but it is a fairly faithful telling of the story. But again, if it's 1988, that's probably what you want as a fan. You want to know what the story was and be able to imagine what was on TV. So it does that job.
As Richard said before, it's one of the rarer Target books, wasn't it?
It is one of the rarest.
I mean, that warehouse story of it burning down, is that actually true?
I believe it is. It was, I know, and again, we've discussed this before, I know when I was selling my Targets, I got offered some ridiculous price for it. It was tended to be one of the books people were generally missing.
Was that the hardcover or the paperback?
Oh, the paperback.
Paperback,
Yeah, paperback.
Even Mindwarp, I remember, was quite...
Yeah, it was.
For a time, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave, for that. Now, next in chronological order is...
Must be you!
Oh, thank you very much.
From a very good cover to this one.
Well, we'll talk about the cover in a minute. So, yes, I've plumbed for Earthshock, which is adapted by everybody's favourite second choice of author, Ian Marter.
Who's the first choice?
Well, it's always Terence, wasn't it?
Sorry.
Terence,
If you can't get Terence, you got Ian.
From what I remember at the time when the novelisation came out, it wasn't particularly well regarded, and I don't think, as we alluded to, the cover, which is basically of Davison crouching down, pointing a gun.
I think they would have had to have paid extra money to use a photo of the actual Cybermen.
If you go, I just don't understand why you not use a picture of the bloody Cybermen, because really that is just not selling anything, is it really? I mean, obviously they're saying, hey, let's keep the surprise of the Cybermen and not tell anybody, even though it's been on TV 18 months before. But anyway, but look, apart from the cover, can I just say, I'm really pleased to say it was an excellent read. Now, again, Ian embellishes the story, like a lot of his other novels, with wonderfully detailed description of characters and situations and locations. Like you sort of pick up the changes in the book as you read through it. So, for example, in the opening scenes, an Earthshock is set in a bloody cold quarry, soggy. He moves it over to a desert location with vultures circling overhead. I'm just going to read you this little bit here, which I loved. Basically, the entrance to the caverns is described as a gigantic human skull with dark openings of caves gaping like eye sockets and nostrils. Very evocative there. Now, the Cybermen you sort of mentioned are sort of fairly blandly portrayed. Well, this is not the case with Ian. He has written the Cybermen, and it comes across like, unfortunately, a bit like the new series Cybermen, where they're stomping along, in unison, clomping noises. He does talk about lots of noises emitting from their bodies when they're moving, and the smell of vapour from their breathing and the oil and all sort of stuff. They're not just robots, they're actually people inside. And these Cybermen were basically, these ones get angry, get satisfied. The Cyber Lieutenant's changed to a Cyber Deputy, and he's a bit of a surly prick, I'll be honest with you. Because every time he tries, the leader wants to do something, he wants to countermand it and do something different. So, and then he sort of fixes up a couple of the continuity errors line where there's a second garrison of Cybermen on the ship, and a couple of them are the weaker than the first lot. So is he predicting, and we'll get to this, the Cyber Scouts in Attack of the Cybermen when they're a lot weaker? So he might be going into the future there. In terms of his description of the Fifth Doctor, comes across more Troughton-esque on paper. He throws his arms around a lot, but very expansive, and he's more inquisitive as well. There's some new scenes where Davison Doctor's pushing his way into the cyber control room and basically they push him out, and Adric describes Tissa as prattling girls as well. So, yes, he's sort of got a fairly good thing on the TARDIS crew there. The Earthshock is essentially, as I mentioned before, Die Hard in space. Lots of short scenes, very fast cut, where the book, it sort of merges them together. So actually the scenes are a lot longer. Actually ratchets up the tension quite nicely, as opposed to where they're watching the TV going, oh my God, it's quite anxiety driving. But so in terms of a couple differences in the story, most of the neighbours and space scenes have been cut out, removed, including references to Black Orchid. The androids have been given pronouns, male and female, and I was thinking, were these possible conversions of the troopers from the archaeological team? The bomb was placed on geological faults so it could split the Earth apart. The worst change, though, of the book was actually removing the line, a well-prepared meal. So, sort of mentioned, poor old Terrence was churning him out late 70s, one a bloody month. I really wish that Ian had more of an opportunity to novelise more, because much as I love Uncle Terrence, Marta just adds more flesh to the bones, and he would have done a fantastic turn, Rob, on Horror, Fang Rock, or even Inferno. So look, this has been a really overlooked adaptation of the book, of the best Cybermen story in the last 42 years, and it was a truly excellent read.
How does it handle everybody's, well, not favourite, but obviously the reason people watch Earthshock?
I mean, that scene starts, the Doctor's almost like resigned to the fact that Adric's going to die, because the Cyber, like, he's blown the console and all the switches are stuck. And then it comes across, there's more frantic build-up to the Doctor trying to rescue him, and then obviously he can't, he just pulls the badge out of the Cyberman's chest unit and puts it in the pocket and just sort of turns away. So there's none of that whole... It's basically 4.5 Raiders out of 5.
4?
Yeah, it was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. Great read.
4.5 burnt Adrix out of 5.
So, Mark, when you finished the book and closed the last cover, did silent credits play in your mind?
I think it was a Victorian fan, had dubbed the Monty Python theme over the silent credits, and they showed that at a club meeting. Yeah. So
I remember when the DVD came out, was it almost 20 years ago now, and there was quite a lot of excitement amongst fandom to be watching it, because it is a very good story.
It still is a good story. I mean, I think it gets a lot of flack.
Look, I've said before, I think Peter Grimwade is a top 3 classic era director.
Yeah.
He's a really, really good.
And it should have been used more.
Yes.
Well, it's amazing how personalities clash sometimes, to the show's detriment.
It does.
Speaking of personalities clashing...
Yes, I was just going to say, beautiful segue. It's FM radio worthy. Rob, what have you got in your hot little hands?
Well, in actual Dave's hot little hand, he's holding The Attack of the Cybermen, number 138 in the range. It comes in at 140 pages, published in the seminal year of 1989.
That late.
By, of course, everyone's favourite scriptwriter, Eric Sayward, working off what is allegedly Paul Moore's script, but I don't know. Wikipedia, fan theories, who knows?
Ian Levine said he wrote
people's
it.
allegations.
Yes.
Now, let's cut to the chase. Attack of the Cybermen is a deeply depressing book to read. At least for me. Sayward dials the cynicism, Perry's suffering, the Doctor's initial ineptitude and general bombastic unpleasantness all the way to 11. And you can see that Sayward's indifference to, at least this Doctor, the Colin Baker's performance, it demonstrated in the book by the fact that the Doctor first appears in chapter 3, which is 32 pages into the actual book. So,
revelation all over again.
Sayward is quite happy to set up, the criminal links to the story and all that sort of thing, and then I've got to include the Doctor because it's Doctor Who on the front cover. So, yes, Attack of the Cybermen, if nothing else, is full of unlikable characters or people in unlikable situations. The descriptions of people and places are bland or entirely absent. You can go through the first initial chapters with the setup and just not. Griffiths is not really, you're not described. Lytton's not really described. Where they are in London is not really described. I mean, you can assume it's drab and grey and all that sort of thing because it's London, but, click. None of the characters are nice to be with, for the full extent of the novel. Like Griffiths, they're either frustratingly childlike, or Lytton, they're sarcastic and cynical, or the Doctor, hamstrung by post-regeneration instability, or Perry, who is something of a lost child, terrorised by her situation and terribly let down by a Doctor who spends too much time doing what he wants and not taking into account her feelings of, terror and fear. It is actually striking how Sayward does sort of concentrate a lot on Perry, and especially her emotional response to what's going on. I was really struck by that. You can see, thankfully, though, that the sexism in the story itself is really dialed back. I mean, in terms of her, you see her on TV and she's wearing tight shorts and she's got tight tops and she's in, the legs are bare, all that sort of thing, which to a boy of a certain age and inclination is fantastic, but it's just, it's a cringe-inducing a little bit now. But you can hear how much she's not enjoying this Doctor or her experiences.
Which is actually, just to cut in, something I've always wondered about it. Given she's basically back pretty much in her own time zone, why does she not just bugger off and leave him?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not really adequately covered, I think, in the book. She's sort of just dragged along in the Doctor's wake.
Yeah.
And she's unable to influence him. He refuses to listen to her. It's always, well, just give me another hour. And then suddenly she's on Telos running for her life, freezing to death.
Being menaced by crayons.
Well, exactly.
Or hit on by crayons. Just depending on how you want to interpret those things.
So she's definitely not enjoying her experiences. It might be that Saywood, in the book at least, is displaying his sympathy towards her in regards to how the character was being treated on the show, but that minor insight of mine collapses when you realise he was the script editor anyway. So,
Do you think it's guilt now that he's trying to reverse engineer what he did?
It was a few years after he'd left the series, I suppose. I mean, possibly. I mean, he's got more to work with in a sense. I'll just read a little excerpt to give an indication of how Saywood is depicting Perry during a certain portion of the story. Perry couldn't imagine the kind of assistance he expected, that being the Doctor, as her nerve had gone and the thought of entering the sewers terrified her. Neither could she believe that the Doctor hadn't seen how afraid she was and ordered her back to the safety of the TARDIS as he usually did. Obviously reference to the Fifth Doctor. Scared and unhappy, Perry followed the Time Lord as he scrambled into the pit. Perry watched the torch's bright beam dance away along the roof of the tunnel. "But I don't want to use it," she screamed. "I want to be a regular tourist and visit Buckingham Palace, see Trafalgar Square and spend hours queuing up outside Madame Tussauds, seeing Tom Baker." Sorry, that was my insight. "To see a lot of waxworks I'm not interested in. Don't you understand?" Now, of course, this being the 80s, with continuity being the word of the day, we get this deathless prose from Eric.
Oh, God.
At first glance, the almost utilitarian appearance of the Cybermen makes them look the same, suggesting a strong egalitarian society. This is far from the case. Their hierarchy is rigid. At the apex and in total command is the Cyber Controller. Next are senior leaders, like a brigadier on Earth, who command a brigade or, as the Cybermen call it, a major phalanx. I've got a major phalanx. They are assisted by leaders and junior leaders. Below them is the army, the very heart of the cyber race, dedicated to the absolute supremacy and domination of their galaxy through war and destruction.
What the hell is that?
Is that like Cyberman, like the PowerPoint induction they put up when you come out of the conversion chamber?
Exactly.
Welcome to the Cyberman
Welcome
Army. Here
to
are some things you need to know
Here
on
are
your
some
first
things you
day.
need to know.
It's not Full Metal Jacket, that's for sure. So, that aside, Saywood is capable of some very good writing like this. And this is in reference to the Doctor. Of all the enemies he had faced, he knew that he despised them the most. Even more than the hated Daleks. There was something about their cold, emotionless minds, obsessed with total domination, that put his nerves on edge. He could understand, if not approve, the average tyrant who gloried in power and its manipulation. The Cybermen glorified in nothing. They had no faith, philosophy, or culture of any kind. They didn't make anything useful other than objects of war. The people they defeated were obliterated, and any prisoners taken were turned into emotionless creatures like themselves. Where Cybermen had passed, there was always total destruction. Never the briefest moment of compassion shown. Simply death and annihilation. I don't know, I've read some depressing, even depraved books in my life, but I would hope that going back to a Doctor Who novelisation might give me respite from the very real life concerns that beset all of us. Instead, I was left with a dreadful sinking feeling that at this stage of the show's history, key people behind the scenes to send the program down a nihilistic and depressing blind alley. Saywood's novelisation of Attack of the Cybermen doubles down on that, and while a competently written book, it left me feeling rather bereft. C-? Let's go with that.
All right.
Wow.
Well done.
Wow.
Definitely sounds like it was an interesting read.
Yeah, you're right. It's an interesting read and approach than you might get from, say, Doctor Who and the Cybermen, but it's not something that you're going to go back to again and again.
Is it better than his Resurrection and Revelation?
I was just going to ask.
I was going to raise that. I've not read them, though I've heard they're appalling.
You've heard correctly.
Oh, God.
They're
okay.
not there. They're not very well done. Yes, I would agree with
Right.
that.
Isn't that a shame though? Or waiting all those years and just to turn him out like what he did. I don't know what he's trying to achieve.
He's achieving a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean the thing is,
But he himself admitted he doesn't get very much because the nation estate takes most of it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that Eric is earning much coin at the moment, given his late stage of his life, so anything is good.
no.
And when you compare what Gareth Roberts and James Goss did with those Douglas Adams ones,
Yeah.
which are really
Yeah.
fun, innovative
Yes.
books.
Yeah, well, there you go. There are my thoughts.
One more segment, Mark. What is it?
It's the big one. It's the one you've all been waiting for. It is time for the Fanwank of the year. First entry we're going to go with is from Dave. What is your Fanwank of the year?
My award for Fanwank of the Year, I'm giving it to the attitude of the entire production team over the last year. Now, bear with me as I extol my rationale here.
do you need to go outside and touch grass, Dave?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Look, the further you get from the classic series, or I think the further you get from wherever you as a fan jumped onto the show, by nature, you're going to become a bit more distant from it. That's the nature of evolving television. And it's fair to say there are a number of fans who, at the end of the Chibnall-Whittaker era, didn't feel all that emboldened by the series and were perhaps felt they were maybe at a dropping-off point.
Hello.
They saw the return of Russell T Davies and a new and exciting up-and-coming actor playing the Doctor as a good chance to maybe give the show one more try and get on board. It is therefore somewhat bizarre that the attitude of the production team from the showrunner down was, we are going to upset some people. In this episode, there'll be fans who will find this controversial. We're going to do some stuff that some fans won't like. And if you don't like it, don't watch. And as you said, Richard, go outside and touch grass. Now, if you're a fan who's maybe drifting away from the show, you're not sure if you want to give it another go, hearing the production team basically say, I'm writing this to piss you off, bugger off, I think is not a good idea. And why are they doing this? Because I think they don't understand they're just making a little TV show. Now, we can all have the debates about whether Doctor Who's woke or not, whether it should be political or not. We can have debates about whether The Sunmakers is a polemic about government taxation or it's an attack on corporations. We can discuss whether the Happiness Patrol is an attack on Thatcher or an attack on cancel culture. We can have these debates. But as much as I enjoy the Black Archive series, most people who watch Doctor Who are not reading the Black Archive series. They're not thinking about the show that way. They want to put on a television show and for 42 minutes not worry about paying for the bills, not worry about how their kid's doing in school, not worry about what's happening in the world. They just want to be entertained. They want the Doctor to arrive somewhere, have an adventure, a few tense moments, a little bit of scariness, a few funny moments, and at the end of it, after 42 minutes, you're smiling and going, that was fun. I got to forget about life for a while and enjoy a television program. They don't need to have particular messaging. They're not there to be told how to live. They don't want it to change the world. But RTD seems to think that his show is not there to entertain, first and foremost, with a bit of messaging underneath. It is there to send a message and maybe, if you're lucky, be entertaining underneath. Now, this is the Fanwank of the Year segment. And if they were to do that in Australia in front of us, I think the message would be, mate, get your hand off it. And therefore I think that when you have a whole bunch of fans who are really excited, like there was a lot of positivity about the showrunner, about the Doctor, and to use that to basically say, we are deliberately setting out to upset a particular group of fans, so don't even bother, I think is just huge wankery. And therefore, my Fanwank of the Year.
Well done.
The reason you don't understand our music is because you don't like it.
Exactly. Rob, what about you?
I've got two short and hopefully pithy Fanwank of the Year awards. RTD's monthly Doctor Who column. Now, it might be nice, or it might have been nice once to have the show's main man writing copy for you, but I'm pretty certain cardboard has more nutritional value than the often insubstantial pap that RTD consigns to paper. Well, really, I mean, what is the point of having RTD on there? He's not going to reveal anything about the show, about what's coming up. It's just a big cock tease, really, and I'm not impressed.
And it's one of those funny things, like, he's never going to write a column and go, this was a really tough week on set.
Yeah.
You know, it's always going to be, it was positive, we're really...
It's marvellous.
Yeah.
It's marvellous.
It's marvellous.
I mean, expand your comic by a couple of pages or a page, or, get another interview in, or, I don't know, more reviews of Big Finish. No, keep the column, that's all right. Sorry. Now, this tweet came out during the week, and I haven't had a chance to triangulate its provenance, so who knows? It could be crap or it could not be. I don't really care. But for the purposes of Fanwank of the Year, apparently the production team is hiring an intimacy coordinator.
Now, like a sensitivity reader or whatever?
Well, apparently when characters in television have fake sex, you've got to be careful that no bits touch. So, or they come close to each other. Look, it could be just something as innocuous as a kiss or whatever. But look, I know we're expected to just deal with the fact that the Doctor was grinding away to Kylie, suggestively looking at what's his name. But come on, this is Doctor Who, not Boogie Nights. What next? Pubic toupees.
Hey, a merkin!
A merkin, that's the word I was looking for, a merkin. That's the producer on The Simpsons, isn't it? David Merkin or something?
I think it is, actually. Yeah.
Hey, Lobster from Warriors of the Deep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That would have been interesting. Oh no, the merkin.
Now look, if the tweet was wrong, I withdraw it all.
No, you
But
don't.
maybe
No, I don't.
maybe he's talking about the land and the sea thing. Maybe they're going to shag a sea devil or
Well,
something.
that is the hot tip, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I've done that with a bloody sex fiend trio. Sorry, that was a Silurian, not a sea devil.
Wasn't there something coming out in series 2, like they're bringing back a baddie again, and spoilers. One of the Guardians, but they're not calling him the negative of white, not i.e. black, they're going to call them the Chief Guardian or something like that. Is that true? Do you know? Have you heard that one?
I've heard Guardian of Light and Guardian of
Chaos,
Dark
I
or
think.
something.
No, it's
Chaos,
Guardian
yeah.
of Chaos, I think, is the other one.
Yeah, because, we don't want to offend anyone at all, ever again.
Has he got legs? Very good, very good. Now, Richard, about you, sir?
Well, I might be about to offend a few people.
Yes!
Including people who have spent their hard-earned money
Uh-oh.
on this.
Uh-oh.
Now,
They promised me I'd be offended.
Offend us, Richard.
I have actually, whilst I read the Big Finish website this year,
Jesus, here we go.
no, I actually turned my attention elsewhere.
Oh.
And I am going to call out a current project to restore a number of missing Doctor Who stories
Yes.
in all their glory.
This is news to me. Complete news to
or
me.
lack thereof. Now, look, we should never be one to stifle creativity or positive endeavours. Positive thoughts, happy times and places. However, I went to an event recently.
Oh, yes.
Yes, where... And Dave was there as well, where we watched one of these...
Recreation.
yes, that's a good word. I was about to say efforts. And look...
Strong endorsement there,
Well,
Richard.
all I will say is the guest who was there was diplomatic, I think was probably the word we used afterwards. Whilst I applaud the intent, I'm sorry, I can't really see the benefit of them or that they're really going to achieve the intended results. Probably is my thing. I suspect they are a little bit of a vanity project, perhaps. I actually think it might have been better had they just concentrated on maybe one or two stories and put a lot of time and effort into them rather than the sort of scattergun approach they seem to be pursuing at the moment.
Yep.
If you'd have picked, say, I'm going to recreate the 2 missing episodes of The Crusade, or I'm going to fix part 3 of The Web of Fear properly, might have come out of it a little better, I think. And look, I am sort of skirting around it. Look, I will say I did sit and watch part 3 of The Web of Fear, and Dave was there as well, and feel free to jump in if your comments are different from mine. But I would say some parts of it actually weren't bad, and you get probably 10-15 seconds where it looked quite good. Problem is, you then go to a really crap bit, and you would be immediately brought straight back out of the story again. In terms of content, I'm sorry, they are not that far removed from the recons from the 1990s, early 2000s. Yeah. And I think probably the death knell, I think, for me, was when there was a picture circulated of Michael Craze from the Macra Terror, which I see Mark now scrolling on his iPad, because clearly this is one that he had. And I thought, really... I think it's time to maybe go away and have a bit of a rethink.
So, who's responsible for this project, Richard?
I don't know. Will the 42 to Doomsday lawyers allow me to name names? No, look, it is obviously one of these things. Yeah. Look, as I said, we should never dismiss creative efforts and that sort of thing, but no. I think he's taking slightly the wrong tack with these. In terms of other Fanwank, look, I did have a short note about some of the stuff that blew up around Ncuti Gatwa's appearance on the what I'm calling the Father Noel Furlong chat show a month or so back. Joke there for the Father Ted fans.
Yes, I was there.
Yes, all 3 of them. Yeah. But no, I love Father. I love Father.
I don't care if he's cancelled.
And I have to say, the episode where he's trapped in the caravan.
Yes, it's brilliant.
That is one of my absolute favourites.
It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
yes.
It is.
There was a big storm around what happened with Ncuti's appearance on that show. I actually did make the effort to watch it. A lot of what was circulating was just rubbish because that's not how the episode played out, and really just get a grip.
You've been told, people. You've been told.
Now, I have some thoughts about the Levine project, but given Mark's doing it as one of his nominations, I'll let you give your views before I chime in with...
Have you watched any of them?
Oh, yes.
I've just seen...
He's seen a couple.
I've seen a few of the early ones. Look, I would say, in fairness, there has been a progression in quality from the very early ones to some of the ones that are being circulated now.
Let's let Mark do
But yes, let's let Mark
and we will get to that because I've got, it will surprise you.
I noticed several pages of it looks like
several
on the iPad.
reams of this has been building up and it's ready to explode. So let's have a go at the notable mentions first. So the first one is, this would be an awkward phone call overall award goes to RTD, who actually outfinished Big Finish by including an image of the Schalke Doctor in a story I haven't watched yet called Rogue. Despite RTD telling DWM a few years back, I thought he was terrible. I thought he took the money and ran, to be honest. It was a lazy performance. He was never on our list to play the Doctor. He wasn't marvellous. So that was my first one, where basically, RTD slagged them off and goes, can we just have a bit of fan wankery here?
Yep.
And we'll take a picture of you and whack you with a whole lot of people. Now, the second one I have, the Type 40 podcast, who have provided a wonderful platform for Ian Levine to calmly and rationally put his point across regarding all things Doctor Who. Now, unlike other YouTubers I could mention, I won't leverage any of their comments or content without asking first. However, I've been compiling some of Ian's comments over the years, and I might look at getting a young and up-and-coming actor whose initials start with Richard to read out some of these in the style that we all know and love. So there's about 40 pages there. So if you'd like to start with that first one there. And remember, more Steel Anthony, and off you go.
I'm the voice of the older fans who despair how BBC studios are reinventing, colouring, changing, twisting and bastardising our beloved DW classics. Yes, I nearly died 3 times, but I will fight tooth and nail to protect the integrity of those beloved classics which are being ruined. Part of me wanted to deny this, but the true fan in me is weeping tears of blood. Classic Doctor Who fans are the most repressed minority of the last 60 years. And they're keeping his usual perspective on things.
Yes, thank you very much for that channeling there, Richard. Now, that was only the entrees.
Cockroaches!
Now I'm going to go to the main course. All right,
God.
Here we go, boys. Strap yourself in. Now, it's the Happy Finish Award. Recently, I went on holiday to Thailand, and while I was there, I got an extreme case of food poisoning and gastro.
Sorry, when you said Happy Finish and then went into Thailand.
Instead of being outside enjoying the sun and cocktails, I was inside in my hotel room, spraying the toilet bowl every 5 minutes. And it was during this time I wondered, is this how Big Finish actually come up with their mashups? So let's have a look through some of these more special ones during this.
Spaghetti alphabet.
It's pretty much, it's like, spray and pray. But let's just go through some of these. So look, the first one is the Paternoster Gang, No Place Like Home. So it's basically Richard's friends, the Sex Fiend Trio, and the Second Doctor. Well, this actually does make sense, because let's be honest, Troughton by all accounts was a top shelf shagger. I thought, where's Jamie though? I thought Second Doctor and Jamie were lovers, weren't they? That's Fanwank, wasn't it? A couple of years ago it came out.
By Strax.
You have a Doctor Who 60 Years Once and Future Coda. Only thing in canon in that picture is the Vord. You've got Benny, you've got the Fugitive Doctor, you've got the War Doctor and some other rando. So Fanwankery there, and it's only the... Also, Big Finish have done the 8th Doctor and Charlie Meet the Mara in Deadly Strangers. When I looked at the image, what is going on there? What's that expression on India Fisher's face? That is a really bad Photoshop. I know they've only got a certain number of pictures of the 8th Doctor. It's actually getting worse, those things. I mean,
I think she's trying to practice her Mara laugh.
I don't know, but like the heads, it's so low res. It's like 8-bit images, and they're all the heads are wonky like the Sea Devils and Warriors of the Deep. And of course, where would a Big Finish mashup be without the obligatory ex-Doctor meeting River Song? That's right, Chris Eccleston's Doctor, number 9, is in an adventure with River Song called Starcross. So I can't wait for them to strap that on. Now, Richard, we've sort of talked about this. This is the number 1 for me. Winner of my 2024 Fan Rank of the Year Award, as well as the Dr. Solon's Advancements in Plastic Surgery, goes to Ian Levine. Now I work in IT and with a lot of AI stuff, and it's still very much a work in progress, but as we've all sort of alluded to, there are still some problems with some of this AI. So look, as we mentioned before, Ben from the Macra Terror, Ian has basically said, well, it's taken nearly 50 years here, but for the first time ever, Ben is in his authentic, accurate costume, down to the last detail, as worn in the Macra Terror. Meticulously reconstructed because somehow it does not show up in one single telesnap. This is accurately rebuilt from the excised centre footage to be absolutely correct. Now, if you look at him, he has a Lego brick for a chest unit. He's got Warwick Kappa shorts on. He's got the legs of a Chinese female swimmer. Hartnell's chin here. What is going? He looks like Matt Smith there. What's going on with that? He's got this massive protruding chin there. Hartnell here. I know. I'll put some of these images up. Hartnell looks like the guy, the old man from Poltergeist 2. You know, God is in his early temple. It's the same energy there as the old man. Well done, Ian. Obviously more work to be done there, but you are the winner. Congratulations of our Fan Rank of the Year award for 2024.
You've got mail.
Received some feedback, obviously, from our last podcast. Very insightful. Mac Moore says, great podcast, funny and informative. Wayne Peters. Richard, you'd like to read that out?
Hello, lad. I just wanted to say that 2 episodes a year is better than none. I'm sorry life has been crazy for you both, but I'm looking forward to the Christmas episode. Hope you're enjoying it so far. And anything you manage to put out, and more power to you. Like Mark, I've pretty much given up on the show. I still adore the classic series and will continue to rewatch it until I die. But I watched the Tennant specials and the Shooty Christmas special and decided it's just not for me. I hope that it brings joy to a whole new generation of fans, but despite it being called Doctor Who, I don't recognise it at all. Nothing that I fell in love with when I was a kid is left anymore. So it's time to part ways. All the best to you both. Keep punching!
Thank you very much to Dave for hosting tonight. Thank you very much, Richard, for coming. Thank you, Mark, for coming. And thank you to me for coming.
Yay! Rob.
And wishing everyone a happy Christmas and an even happier New Year. But before we go, it's plug time. Dave.
Please do check us out on the Doctor Who show. We have a lot of episodes coming out, and this year we have started our new Gin and Tartars podcast.
Yes.
Which feature a couple of gentlemen right here on this couch, where we watch some classic Who over a couple of gin and tonics, and then chat about it. So that's been fun. If you like Blake 7, well, Rich and I also have
Baseball, the Blake 7 podcast, which will be returning soon.
Yes, but we have got the first 2 seasons out, so
Yes.
if you're enjoying the new Blake 7 Blu-ray,
Yes, actually, if you've got your new Blu-ray, or if you've picked up the new
Book.
Series B production guide.
yes, your journey can be accompanied by
Yes.
Spacefall.
Exactly.
Yes, very good listening as well. Excellent listening.
It is.
So, on that cheery note, I've been Rob.
I've been Mark.
I'm Richard.
And I'm Dave.
Keep punching!
Merry Christmas! Happy Christmas! Merry Christmas!
Set course for Gather Prime.
Meow, 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 meow.